Hey, what's up? My name is Ryan with DrivenFab, and today we're going to be doing an install guide on our T4 twin scroll top mount Evo X turbo kit. That's a lot of words. This kit can be a little intimidating to install because there's a lot of stuff going on back here, but we're going to take you through step by step to show you how it's done. So real quick, I'm going to go through what's included in the install kit. Give you your 3-inch 2-bolt gasket, T4 twin scroll exhaust manifold gasket, downpipe V-band clamp, the hard drain line flange off the bottom of the turbo, your feed line, soft drain line, with the lower coolant line and the upper coolant line, some heat shielding, and then inside this we have the boost control solenoid pigtail, the accessory turbo fittings. So we get the drain fitting for the block, we have the coolant lines right here that go into the side of the turbo, we have the feed line for the side of the block, and then we have these P clamps for the feed line. We also have the drain flange hardware and the downpipe hardware. And then the turbo hardware. So you have 4 studs, the 4 copper locking nuts, and then the 4 Nordlock washers. And then some swag. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to start off with are the feed line fittings for the block. One for the oil feed, which is this small M10 by 125. Remember to put the crush washer on there. It goes in right below the water pump. Next thing you're going to want to do is get the drain fitting that goes into the block. This does have an O-ring on it, so you're going to want to make sure you lube it up before you stick it in. It's just an M6 bolt that fastens it. Just remember that this block is aluminum, so don't kill it. Next thing you're going to want to do is grab the exhaust manifold. Make sure you put the exhaust manifold gasket on. Anytime you put an exhaust manifold or something like an intake manifold on, same thing with the cylinder head, you always want to fasten from the middle out. So when you torque these, you want to do these two, crisscross to these two, and then do the outermost studs last. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to grab the exhaust manifold studs and the turbine housing for the turbo. Those are going to go on next. Ensure that you have these fasteners installed onto the turbine housing and are freely able to rotate, so that when you put the center cartridge in, you can fasten all these down. And when you install these, you just want to do them finger tight, make sure they bottom out. There's no reason to put 2 nuts on them and really crank them down. Next thing you're going to want to grab is the exhaust manifold gasket. So once you have the turbine housing on, you're going to want to put the lock nut, the Nordlock washer on. These lock nuts are only a one-time use. So if for any reason you have to pull the turbo back off, get new lock nuts. This is just for demonstration purposes, so we're not going to put the lock nuts on it. We're going to move on to installing the downpipe. So you're going to need the V-band clamp, the downpipe hardware, and then the 2-bolt gasket. You're going to want to grab the downpipe next. V-band clamp. Put this on. Same thing goes with these downpipes. You see there's 2 nuts on this style of V-band clamp. The second one is a locking nut. So you don't want to have to thread that one down more than you have to. Take your 2-bolt gasket, your hardware. This is bolted up into a jig so that we know where the stock cat meets up at. Bolt in here. You just want to put all this stuff on loose for now. Finger tight so you can still have some adjustability. Now comes the fun part of installing the wastegates and the dump tubes. This seems to be the issue that most people have, or where most people have issues, I guess I should say. It's a very tight package back there with 3.5-inch downpipe, both dump tubes and wastegates. So we're going to walk you through the easiest method to install these, how they fit, give you a rough idea of the angle that the wastegates are supposed to be mounted to the manifold, and things of that nature. So selecting spring pressure on these twin scrolled manifolds is a little bit different than a single scroll manifold. Standard rule of thumb is roughly 50% of your target boost that you want to achieve. So if you want to run 30 psi, you run a 15-pound spring. These, we've noticed, if you run around 30% of the desired boost level, is the sweet spot of where you want to be. So if you want to run, say 40 psi, run a 12 to 15 psi spring. One thing you want to make sure when you go to install these is that you don't forget the firing ring. There's a little groove, a receiver groove, down in here for this firing ring. It slides down in there, and that's what the wastegate seals on, so you don't get an exhaust leak. At the time being, just for purposes of this install guide, we're not going to use the firing rings. Just make sure that you include them when you go to install your kit, because that's how the wastegate seals. First wastegate that I like to put on is the one located closer to the passenger side of the car. When you do this, you're going to take the big clamp for the inlet and the smaller clamp for the outlet. When you do this, you want to make sure that you put these in a place where you're going to be able to access the hardware. Because when you're reaching over the back of the car, you don't have a whole lot of room for activities. I'll put the first wastegate on. I'm just going to leave these loose. You're going to want to start off with the passenger side dump tube. It's this one. It's going to run along the bottom side, the down pipe. Get it on there loose, and then you'll have to go back and make just slight adjustments to it. So it's pretty close. That's how that one fits. You're going to take the driver's side wastegate tube, and this one actually runs along top of the down pipe. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the turbo, get the drain line mounted. So what we do is we put a small amount of red RCV on this flange surface. And we use the two supplied nuts to screw that on there. You can also at this time put the water fittings on, which is this M14 by 1.5 with the crush washer. Go in here. And on the other side as well. Tighten all those down, and we'll move on to the next step. So the next part you need to be pretty careful with. You'll actually remove the compressor housing off the turbo and attach the soft line loosely to the hard line. You're going to want to put the 60 on the hard line and the 90 goes to the block, but you're going to want to route it towards the drain line fitting on the block. So you're going to snake the hard line in there first. And you're going to want to put the turbo, the CHRA housing into the turbine. And I'll put a little diagram up that shows how these little wing tabs need to be located so that you can slide this turbo in. But just take your time, don't rush doing this. You don't want to bend any of these fins. I always find it easiest to leave these center section housing bolts loose so that this can still rotate for when you put the drain line on. So get that on there, just finger tight for now. And then you can go back through and lock down these bolts up here. The next thing you're going to want to do after you lock this center section down is move on to the coolant lines. You're going to take the shorter of the two coolant lines, that goes on the front of the turbo, and runs to the coolant crossover pipe on the back side of the motor. You can see right here. So that'll go on there. Just reuse the factory clamp on that one, and then this one will thread in the front side of the turbo. The longer of the two will run along the back side, going to the thermostat housing up here. Just thread onto the back, just like this. One thing I did forget to mention, you are going to want to install this heat shielding around the lower coolant hose in the drain line, and then you're going to want to use whatever is left to cover the first part of this coolant hose that runs to the thermostat. So after you install the coolant lines, you're going to want to put the compressor cover back onto the turbo. The clearance between the wastegate and the compressor cover right here is pretty tight. So when you put this on, you're going to want to go to the smaller part of the turbo, down here, slide it in, and then rotate it up. And this compressor cover is actually one of the last things that you'll tighten when installing the kit. So just put that in an easy place to get to for when you install the upper intercooler pipe. One of the last things you'll have to do is install the oil feed line. What we do is run it towards the front of the car. You'll take the two supplied P-clamps and you'll run them up top on the valve cover right here. You'll actually pull the valve cover bolt out, run it through the P-clamp, and then tighten the valve cover bolt back down. You're going to run the feed line along the valve cover and then wrap it down and put the feed line on bottom here. So that's pretty much it. The hard part's done. The hot parts kit is installed. The only thing left to do would be to install the intake and the upper intercooler pipe. We always recommend for people to leave the compressor cover loose while you install the intercooler pipe, get everything to line up, and then go ahead and tighten it down. If you have any questions, if you'd like to see more info on this product, I'll put a link down in the description. You can shoot us an email, drivenfabrication@gmail.com. Give us a call to the shop, 513-816-7237. We can get you taken care of. That is it for today. If you like what you saw, go ahead and click that subscribe button down there. You'll be notified every time we upload a new video. Put the links down in the description below for our Instagram and our Facebook page. Make sure you follow along on all those. If you have any questions, give us a call, shoot us an email. We'd love to help out. Until next time, see you.